And we're just going to go ahead and jump straight into this, because this is literally the foundation for everything that the Trump administration did from the very beginning of Venezuela in this administration. It says Justice Department drops claim that Venezuela's Cartel de las Soles is an actual group. Last year, before capturing President Nicolas Maduro, the Trump administration designated a Venezuelan slang term for drug corruption in the military as a terrorist organization, and he said he led it. So if you rewind to just before September, because it was early September, the strikes started happening. If you rewind just to early September, you'll know that the Trump administration and Trump himself came out and said the reason why they're doing this, or the reason why that they're targeting Venezuela and putting pressure on them, is because Maduro is the leader of a drug cartel called the Cartel de las Soles. And they said it's an actual organization, it's a narcotics organization, and the Trump administration designated them as an actual organization. And then everything following that, they used as the jumping off point to begin launching boat strikes and to start the kidnapping stuff and everything with Venezuela. The problem is Cartel de las Soles is a slang term. It's not an actual organization. And so the Trump administration designated something that doesn't exist in order for them to do what they did. The entire thing falls apart since it doesn't actually exist, and the Trump administration lied about it. Now that Nicolas Maduro is in court, in order for them to get that to stick in their indictment, they would have to prove that the Cartel de las Soles is a real organization and Maduro is the leader of it. They can't do it. So they dropped it after they went and took him out. It's all one giant charade. It says the Justice Department has backed off a dubious claim about President Nicolas Maduro and the Trump administration promoted last year and laying the groundwork to remove him from power in Venezuela, accusing him of leading a drug cartel called Cartel de las Soles. The claim traces back to a 2020 grand jury indictment of Mr. Maduro drafted by the Justice Department. In July 2025, copying language from it, the Treasury Department designated Cartel de las Soles as a terrorist organization. In November, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and President Trump's national security advisor, ordered the State Department to do the same. But experts in Latin American crime and narcotics issues have said that it's actually a slang term invented by the Venezuelan media in the 1990s for officials who are corrupted by drug money. And on Saturday, after the administration captured Mr. Maduro, the Justice Department released a rewritten indictment that appeared to tactically concede the point. So right off the bat, everything that they were doing before, we knew it was illegal anyways, but on top of that, they built it upon something that doesn't actually exist. But remember, this is the administration of transparency. That's what we continue to get told. It says prosecutors still accused Mr. Maduro of participating in a drug trafficking conspiracy, but they abandoned the claim that Cartel de las Soles was an actual organization. Where the old indictment refers 32 times to Cartel de las Soles and describing Mr. Maduro as its leader, the new one mentions it twice and says that he, like his predecessor, President Hugo Chavez, participated in, perpetuated, and protected the patronage system. The retreat calls into greater question the legitimacy of the Trump administration's designation of the Cartel de las Soles as a foreign terrorist organization last year. And Elizabeth Dickinson, the deputy director for Latin America at the International Crisis Group, said that the new indictment's portrayal of Cartel de las Soles was exactly accurate to reality, unlike the 2020 iteration. I think the new indictment gets it right, but the designations are still far from reality, she said. Designations don't have to be proved in court. And that's the difference. Clearly, they knew that they had to prove it in court, and they couldn't. So they had to completely rewrite everything. And now that he's already been dragged into jurisdiction, they can make other things stick to Maduro as well. The Drug Enforcement Administration's annual National Drug Threat Assessment, which details major trafficking organizations, has never mentioned Cartel de las Soles, nor the annual World Drug Report by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which is important because those two groups, that designate every year. They put out a thing basically listing all of these organizations and who they are and what they are and whatnot. Not one of them has ever mentioned Cartel de los Soles because it's not a real thing. It is a slang term. So everything that they did right off the bat was based upon fabrication and lies in order to get things done, basically like they've been doing everything else. And then in response to that, we have this. This is where we start getting into the theatrics. And so I really want to make a point about this, but we'll go through this real quick. Nicolas Maduro hires Assange lawyer for criminal defense. Ousted Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro has hired prominent criminal defense lawyer Barry Pollock, who long represented WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, as his counsel in Manhattan criminal proceedings. Get ready for the circus, guys, because things are prepping for it. It says Pollock, a veteran Washington trial lawyer, filed a notice of appearance Monday as Maduro's attorney in the Southern District of New York narco-terrorism case. Maduro's wife and co-defendant, Cecilia Flores, will be represented by a veteran Houston federal prosecutor, Mark Donnelly. By turning to Pollock, one of the boutique firm Harris, St. Laurent, and Wechsler LLP, the captured Venezuela leader has brought in a lawyer experience in defending another internationally high-profile and complex U.S. prosecution. Pollock oversaw Assange's 14-year legal matter culminating in a 2024 plea deal for leaking U.S. national security secrets. Get ready, because this whole thing might be drawn out for a very long time. Possibly. I'm not predicting, but it's possible this could get drawn out for a very long time, depending on if they can use this for whatever reason that they want to. Distraction, future precedent for any other actions that they want to do, like Cuba or Colombia or any one of those. This could go on for a while. It says, as the couple faces a Manhattan federal judge, Maduro's lawyer Pollock will draw on decades of criminal defense litigation that led him to hold leadership roles in the bar, such as a past president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers and the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project. Donnelly is a Spanish-speaking Houston native who was a prosecutor for the Harris County District Attorney's Office from 2001 to 2009. He later worked in the Justice Department between 2009 and 2022, climbing the ranks to become senior advisor to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Texas, one of the busiest federal courts in the country. A year after Donnelly started at Packer, Sanchez, and Donnelly, he joined a team of lawyers and investigators assembled by the Texas House of Representatives in 2023 to investigate abuse of office allegations lodged against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. So we got another theater situation here that led to the impeachment trial at the Texas Senate. So this is, again, we're getting into the thing where we've got high-profile names coming into this. This dude was a part of one of the most controversial, drawn-out legal proceedings in history when it comes to these, to specifically the truth seekers and those on the right and all that type of stuff with Assange. We know that was something that they used constantly for distractions and propaganda and stuff like that. And so they've got the same dude, Pollock, involved with this. A little bit more on that. So if we jump over here, it says Pollock previously represented WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, steering the anti-secrecy activists' legal strategy in U.S. for more than a decade. Pollock helped secure a 2024 plea deal that led to Assange's release from prison. That's another aspect that I'll bring up in just a second regarding Maduro as well. It says Andy Burrell, the president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, a group that Pollock once headed, told NBC News that his colleagues' experience representing an internationally controversial defendant like Assange was good preparation for the Maduro case. Pollock did not immediately reply to the interview request for this article. In a brief exchange with the NBC News reporter after Maduro's arraignment, Pollock said, I think that President Maduro said in court speaks for itself. Maduro, speaking through a translator in court, declared his innocence, claimed that he was kidnapped, and insisted that he is still the president of Venezuela. This is where I found something's not adding up. It says it was not immediately known what led Maduro to hire Pollock. Now, I don't have it to show for you guys. I wish I did. I just don't, because I saw it and I read it and I thought I saved it and I didn't and I can't find it anymore. So just hang with me. Not only is it saying it was not immediately known what led Maduro to hire Pollock, the problem is from multiple sources, nobody knows when he even had the opportunity to reach out to him. Because through the timeline that I've read, is Maduro was given for right off the bat, he was given defense attorneys right off the bat, and then out of nowhere, Maduro didn't even have a chance to call or send outside word to anybody else to go after Pollock and bring him in as his attorney. Pollock just showed up and told the judge that he was representing Maduro. And then judge assigned Pollock to Maduro's case. So Maduro wasn't even in contact with Pollock. Now, could Maduro have called him before the whole thing even went down in Venezuela? Then you start asking questions of, this was clearly orchestrated. Did somebody else who's setting all this stuff up have Pollock on retainer for this whole situation? That would tell us that something was already set up and orchestrated for Maduro to begin with. So right off the bat, this lawyer situation with Pollock, who represented Assange, is telling us it's scripted. Because Maduro never even had a chance to call for Pollock and was assigned different defenders beforehand. So we've got our first situation here that's telling us that this is definitely scripted. So whatever news that starts coming out, and again, I'm expecting this to be theatrics. I absolutely am expecting this to be theatrics. Who knows? Maybe it'll go like that, but I don't know. I think they can use this. But if they do use this as theatrics, don't get fooled by all of the stuff that they're going to start pulling out and throwing everywhere, because this is clearly has some depth to it that's being orchestrated. That's when we get into this. 92-year-old judge handling Maduro's case doesn't give an excrement about what anyone thinks about him. Lawyers who have practiced before the Clinton appointee said he's known to operate a little bit differently. This is, again, we're stacking up for something interesting here. It says the extraordinary criminal case against deposed Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is headed before a 92-year-old judge with a stubborn streak and an often unorthodox approach to running his courtroom. U.S. District Judge Alvin Hallerstein, a Clinton appointee based in Manhattan, is overseeing Maduro's arraignment Monday and is likely to preside over any trial of the ousted president. And it says Hallerstein has ruled against President Donald Trump or his administration in other high-profile cases, including charges involving alleged hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. Hallerstein twice rejected Trump's bid to move the case to federal court. Just 2 months ago, an appeals court overturned one of those rulings. And Hallerstein's also issued a sweeping order last May blocking the Trump administration from deporting immigrants under the Alien Enemies Act with little, if any, due process. The ruling essentially halted such deportations in the Southern District of New York, where the judge sits. And now we've got something else here. This is a Clinton appointed judge. He's a 92-year-old old school stubborn dude who thinks he knows it all. And he's ruled multiple times against Trump. We're setting up for court TV, in my opinion. But again, it's early, and this is just the trend of what I'm seeing. Goes on to say the Maduro case is before Hallerstein because he was assigned to an indictment of a Maduro co-defendant back in 2011, almost a decade and a half ago. Maduro himself was first added to that criminal case in 2020, and prosecutors obtained a superseding indictment against him that was unsealed Saturday. A verdict on the charges against Maduro, which, by the way, just quick rewind here. The indictment that was unsealed that Pam Bondi came out and said, oh, we got this for this and this reason and that reason and stuff like that. It's like 30-something pages. There's not one mention of drug trafficking in there. So again, it's all based upon lies, since Maduro wasn't even didn't even have an indictment for him against that. So the verdict on the charges against Maduro could take a long time, and Hellerstein had some experience with prominent cases that can drag on for years. He wound up presiding over more than 10,000 lawsuits filed by responders and families of responders to the September 11th, 2021 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. So he was also a judge during 9/11. Boy, oh boy. In 2010, the judge irked lawyers on both sides of those disputes by rejecting a proposed settlement that would have paid out between $575 million and $657 million. Following his objective, the value of the settlement fund was increased by about $50 million, and Hellerstein approved it. Not every attention-grabbing case Hellerstein has overseen has involved grave matters. Lawyers say that he took particular delight in the appearance of a hotel heir and reality TV star Paris Hilton in his courtroom in 2012. So he's Clinton appointed, he's ruled against Trump multiple times, and he's done cases involving 9/11 and Paris Hilton. The closest recent analog of the Maduro prosecution is the trial of the former Panamanian President Manuel Noriega. You guys remember Noriega, similar case to what just happened with Maduro, who was seized by the United States troops back in 1990. Over 20 months passed between Noriega's arrest and the opening of his jury trial. The trial, which lasted 7 months, led to his conviction on 8 drug and racketeering charges. He was initially sentenced to 40 years in prison, although that figure later was cut to 30 and then to 17 years. That's not all with this guy. We jump over here. Then we start to realize that this theatrics show might go worldwide and have further use in the Middle East. Meet the judge who will decide Maduro's fate, 92-year-old Hellerstein, who oversaw 9/11 and the Sudanese genocide cases. It says the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York has assigned 92-year-old senior judge Alvin Hellerstein to preside over the high-profile case of former President Nicolas Maduro. He has a long record of handling some of the most consequential cases in U.S. history. His career includes overseeing litigation related to the 9/11 attacks and cases involving the Sudanese genocide. The assignment places one of the most consequential international prosecution in recent years into the hands of a judge whose Orthodox Jewish background has long been public and who played a central role in some of the court's most sensitive matters. Hellerstein's religious identity is barely highlighted in the mainstream coverage, but it has been talked about in Jewish and legal circles. He observes Jewish law while maintaining a reputation for strict judicial independence and meticulous adherence to federal procedure. Hold on. And it says the case has attracted global attention. The case has attracted global attention with particular interest in Israel and Jewish communities worldwide, given Maduro's long-standing alliance with Iran and his verbal attacks on Israel and Zionism. And this is where I think we are going to start seeing some major blowback in regards to this, because now we have this high-profile case built upon lies and fabrications that's going into the hands of a theatrical lawyer as well as a Orthodox Jewish judge, with Jewish communities worldwide paying attention to what's going on because of Maduro's stance against Israel. And it's taking place in the same state and in the same city where we just had Mamdani put in place, and we know where he stands on things. You want to talk about setting a powder keg? Welcome to it. This could get really bad. It could. I'm not saying it is because we don't know. But this could get very, very interesting very quickly in regards to this. Don't fall for the theatrics. If you want to, I mean, the stuff that's popping into my head with this is I'm talking about if this thing does go to trial and stuff like that, and they start holding, court over there, we're talking about people out front of the courthouse of the Jewish and the Islam variety. This could get interesting. So we'll see. Again, things seem to be setting up in regards to this. But the fact that Pollock, basically somebody somewhere told him that you're going to be his lawyer and you're going to show up at this time because Maduro has had no contact with him, is telling me that something is getting set up for this. All right. So that's the first stage of all this. We all good? Everybody good? All right. Let's head into the part 2 of this Venezuela situation. And we're going to take a look at what's going on with some of the resources over there. First things first, we got U.S. may reimburse oil companies investing in Venezuela, says Trump. That's right. Trump is saying that they may subsidize U.S. oil companies to go into Venezuela, which means you pay for it and they profit from it. Your money will go to pay for oil companies to invest in Venezuela oil. This is President Donald Trump suggested that the U.S. may subsidize efforts by energy companies to rebuild Venezuela's oil industry. Trump said that the project to have the U.S. oil industry companies expand their operations in the country could be up and running in less than 18 months, a time frame starkly at odds with estimates from energy industry experts, while oil companies have been largely silent about their willingness to reinvest in Venezuela. I think we can do it in less time than that, but it'll be a lot of money, Trump told NBC. A tremendous amount of money will have to be spent, and the oil companies will spend it, and then they'll get reimbursed by us or through revenue. When they say by us, they mean by you guys. Trump's not going to pay for it. No, you'll pay for it. As U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright plans to talk this week with oil industry executives, according to people familiar with the matter. Wright will attend the Goldman Sachs Energy, Clean Tech and Utilities Conference in Miami this week with executives from Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and other companies are scheduled to attend. Years of corruption, underinvestment, fires, and thefts has left Venezuela's crude facilities in tatters. Large oil companies have said little about their desire to resume operations there, and energy experts say reviving Venezuela's oil industry could be a decade-long process and could cost upwards of $100 billion. Chevron is the only oil supermajor still operating in Venezuela. And as far as U.S. oil companies, as of right now, from what I've been able to check, Chevron is the only one that's still making profits out of Venezuela right now because they're the only ones operating there. That's based on shipment records. And then the other thing that I have noticed, there's reports of countries all across the gamut: Brazil, Russia, Iran. There's a couple other Middle Eastern countries, India, China, a couple other Asian countries as well, that are all still importing and exporting oil out of there, even though Trump put up the blockade on there. So they are still indeed going in and out with oil and boats from Venezuela right now, even with a blockade up. So I don't believe, I know a lot of people are saying it, well, they're just being defiant and to Trump and stuff. I don't believe it's defiance. I believe that the Trump administration's letting it happen. For whatever reason that may be, that's not, I don't think it's defiant. So, but that's what we got as far as the oil situation. So we'll keep eyes on what's going to happen there. The other aspect and resource that we have is JP Morgan funds $6 billion, that's euro, right? I believe that's euro. Smelter plant hours after U.S. seizes Venezuela metal wealth. JP Morgan backs massive smelter project as U.S. asserts control over Venezuelan metal assets. Yeah, they got a bunch of metal going on there. Says JP Morgan Chase underwrote a $6 billion or $8 billion smelter plant investment in the United States just hours after Washington moved to seize Venezuela metal wealth tied to longstanding international legal claims. The plant smelter is a joint venture involving Korea Zinc Co. Korea Zinc Co. Hang on to that for the end of this, Korea. With backing from the United States government and private investors, including JP Morgan Chase & Co., the facility to be located in Clarksville, Tennessee, represents an $8 billion investment. Federal support has been substantial. Washington has offered direct incentives through the Department of Commerce CHIPS and Science Act, which awarded $210 million in funding for equipment and infrastructure at the site. The United States Department of Defense has also taken a significant equity position in the venture. So we actually covered the United States government stake. They took a stake from Korea Zinc Co. We covered that just roughly a month or so ago. And then JP Morgan was up and ready as soon as the Venezuela situation went down, because they knew it was going to happen. So as soon as that was done, they could go ahead and get this set up as well. So the United States government and JP Morgan Chase were both prepared and ready to go when it comes to Venezuela metals, and we're prepped and ready at the time of the Venezuela situation, which again shows that it's not about drugs. To all the pastors that keep throwing that around, it's not about drugs. If you're actually willing to pay attention, or you want to tell the truth. It says less than 24 hours after the United States strikes on Venezuela, the government quietly secured a massive smelter deal to process the country's $1 trillion in precious metals. Cost of the new facility, $8 billion. The financier is JP Morgan. And yep, good to go. It says the smelter is designed to produce 13 different metals onshore, from base metals such as zinc, lead, and copper to precious metals like silver and gold, as well as strategic elements including antimony, iridium, and germanium, essential for semiconductors, aerospace, and defense industries. Now, here we go. Officials have petitioned the project as a critical step towards reducing United States and allied reliance on Chinese-controlled processing capacity. And there's the narrative. Right there. It's wide out in the open. It says Venezuela's rich mineral endowment, including vast reserves of gold, silver, and other strategic materials, is central to these disputes. The Caribbean nation's Arco mineral region, for example, is estimated by some analysts and companies prospectuses to contain minerals valued at hundreds of billions of dollars, though precise figures vary widely and are subject to technical assumption. JP Morgan's involvement in the smelter project is part of a broader initiative. The bank is publicly described as a decade-long $1.5 trillion commitment to strengthen supply chains in critical sectors, including energy and materials. In this case, JP Morgan is serving both as a financier and advisor, helping structure the capital stack that includes government equity, loans, and private capital, effectively aligning private sector finance with federal industry policy priorities. And what do we call that, kids? Fascism. It's corporatism, which is one of the pillars of fascism. But they were prepared. They were ready. They knew ahead of time. How did both the government and the bank know at the same time? Well, because they are working together for what just happened in Venezuela. And so, again, I can't stress this enough. I stand in the camp that they are setting up their hemispheres. They are setting up their backyards. They are grabbing control of all of their neighboring countries, so they will rule over them. And that includes taking control of land and resources and all of these things as well. This is not a new tactic. We've covered this stuff for a long time now when it comes to getting these things organized. Now, I know the main talking point that everybody rolls with has to do with the Club of Rome, 10 countries, 10 districts and stuff like that. I don't anymore. I used to be one of those people. I'll admit it. I used to be one of those people that followed along with that Club of Rome thing. I don't abide by that thing anymore. I think that is out there and it is old news. They are definitely advancing in a different direction. At this moment in time, it appears more like the 1930s technate style of things over here. But I don't think it's going to abide directly in line with that either. I think that's going to be a little bit different as of what we're seeing right now. But that includes grabbing a hold of these countries and their resources and maintaining a peace through strength control over their neighbors or their backyards, or the most common term that you're starting to see being used by the media companies worldwide is hemispheres. We'll get to that a little bit later. So this is getting very, very fascinating. And again, I believe that we are currently witnessing the beginnings of total world power shifting. But we'll just have to wait and see. Now, it's funny because sometimes you just see information and verifiable facts and evidence, tangible evidence, that completely destroys the public narrative, but people will still outright reject it because they want to go along with the cozy and comfy narrative. Because I think a lot of it has to do with people that they're afraid of new information. And I've held this belief for a while. It can be overwhelming when you have been brought up and told and believe something for so long. Even if it's not true, you don't want to deviate from it because that's the warm and cozy blanket that you've had for your entire life, and you just don't want to go along with it. And so one of those things that we've been told is Trump went into Venezuela because it's going to blow up the relationship between Venezuela and China and Russia and Iran. But the problem is the vice president, who we can't necessarily confirm it, but there's a whole lot of evidence that says that she was the one that's been in working with the United States with this whole transition, is best friends with all three of those groups that I have been told 1,000 times by both secular and pastors was the whole reason why Trump was going in there. China, Russia, and Iran back Delcy Rodriguez as she takes charge of Venezuela. Delcy Rodriguez has officially taken office as Venezuela's acting president just hours after Nicolas Maduro was captured by the United States in the CNN report. And guess who are the people that are standing right there? Oh, those are representatives of China, Russia, and Iran. It says the ambassadors of China, Russia, and Iran, all close allies of Venezuela, were among the first foreign diplomats to congratulate Rodriguez after she was sworn in. I saw the video. And she stepped down from her podium after her speech, and the first three people that she embraced with loving hugs and bowing were these three guys. Shortly after Rodriguez took the oath of office, she was embraced by China's ambassador to Venezuela, Lan Hu, followed by Russian ambassador Sergei Melik-Bagdasarov, and Iran's ambassador Ali Shingini, then bowed towards her with his hands clapped in a gesture of respect. The three diplomats stood side by side during the swearing-in ceremony. Interesting. It's interesting how every single narrative that is getting pushed right now is getting blown up. People just pay attention to what's really going on. But who am I? I don't know. Just some dude on the internet. All right. So with that, let's start getting deeper into this. When it comes to the roots in Russia, this is where I think things get pretty interesting and we start to see a lot of crossover, not only with history, but with current events that are happening right now. And so let's dive into this situation regarding Trump, Putin, Venezuela, and Greenland. And let's see what's going on. So we covered these 3 points. We covered these on Saturday. I just want to go over them again in case you weren't here Saturday or you just need a refresher, you forgot, and we'll go over this. These are some of the things that we covered on Saturday. In 2019, Fiona Hill, who is Trump's ex-Russia advisor, testified that the Russian government would make a swap of Venezuela for Ukraine. She testified, this was October 14th, 2019. She testified before Congress and said that the Russian government was indeed making deals with the Trump administration to swap Venezuela for Ukraine. So Russia gets Ukraine, United States gets Venezuela. We also have confirmation with Russian politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky, who also confirmed Fiona's testimony in 2020 when he appeared on Russian state TV, and he stated that Trump, will take Venezuela, we will take Ukraine. He'll say, look, Venezuela, and tomorrow I will take Cuba. So Russian politician was confirming Fiona Hill's testimony. And then we know this Venezuela deal would also be in line with the recently revived Monroe Doctrine, which Trump has now renamed the Monroe Doctrine. So that's what we covered on Saturday. I wanted to see if there was more to all of this, and specifically with the timing of immediately following this, Trump shifted to Greenland and Cuba, which is pretty interesting. So let's take a look, shall we? Roots in Russia. Ron Lauder. Yes, of Estee Lauder. Yeah, I know, right? Is a confidant to both Trump and Putin. He has history that goes back a long ways with both of them. Has been in the middle of Trump's Greenland venture since 2017. Trump has been trying to get Greenland since 2017. Trump began working with his national security advisor, John Bolton, you guys remember him, along with Ron Lauder as an inside negotiator with the Danish government. So basically what's going on is we got Ron Lauder, who is a confidant to both Trump and Putin. He goes to Trump and says, have you thought about taking Greenland? And Trump liked the idea. That's the whole thing. But he wanted to do it under the radar. He didn't want it publicly out there. So Trump takes that idea, goes to John Bolton and says, let's take a look and see if we can get Greenland for the United States. And my confidant, my buddy here, Ron Lauder, because he is a confidant of mine, as well as he knows some people in the Danish government. He's going to be an inside negotiator that's going to be able to work under the radar so it's not publicly getting out there. Well, Bolton rejected Lauder as the inside negotiator. He didn't want to work with somebody outside of his bubble. But in 2018, John Bolton tapped Trump's Russia advisor, Fiona Hill. To begin conversations with Denmark. So Fiona Hill and a couple of her people in her team started conversations with Denmark. They actually started having conversations. And then when things started to get just a little bit too far going, Bolton halted the talks shortly afterwards. This is legitimate stuff. Let's take a look. Trump ally who inspired Greenland purchase idea quietly invest in Greenlandic companies. Interesting. Ron Lauder speaking at the Jerusalem Post. We'll get to that in a minute. This is Ronald Lauder, the billionaire Estee Lauder heir, who, according to former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton, first put the idea of buying Greenland into Donald Trump's mind, has quietly taken ownership stakes in Greenlandic companies. Oh, things are starting to make a little bit more sense now. Lauder is investing in Greenland, so it would benefit him if Trump took control of it. The revelations come from a major investigation by the Danish newspaper Politiken. Lauder even offered to act as an intermediary with Denmark when Trump began exploring this idea, a notion that triggered a diplomatic rift in 2019 and later shaped Trump's revived Arctic ambitions when he returned to office in 2025. Now, Politiken reports that Lauder, at age 81, has begun investing directly in Greenland. According to Politiken, Lauder, it is a participant in Greenland Development Partners, a Delaware-registered investment consortium that has bought into Greenland Investment Group. Greenland Investment Group has expressed interest in bidding for a major hydropower project at Lake Tasersiak, Greenland's largest lake. The project is envisioned as an energy source for a future aluminum smelter, and according to company projections, could markedly increase the island's export revenues and boost the territory's public finances. The company is chaired by Josette Sheeran, the former U.S. Deputy Secretary of State under Condoleezza Rice and former head of the UN World Food Program. Sheeran also leads the investor group's Greenland portfolio more broadly. Goes on to say Lauder's investment first became visible through Greenland Water Bank. The company bottles water from the Lingmark Spring in, not even going to attempt to say that word, on Disco Island and sells it locally under the brand Imavik. Until this year, it was fully owned by Greenlandic businessmen Sven Hardenberg and Jorgen Waver Johansson, who sold part of their shares to the foreign investor group. He said that the water's performance in comparative testing helped seal the Americans' interest, and Greenland Water Bank remains a small firm with 2024 accounts showing minimal staffing costs and a modest financial loss, but through it, Lauder's presence in Greenland became unmistakable. Analysts interviewed by Politicans say that it is difficult to view Lauder's investment as purely commercial, especially given his history with Trump and his role in encouraging the idea of the United States' control over Greenland. Lauder's Greenlandic partners are well connected. Hardenberg is a former top civil servant and energy executive, while Weaver Johansson is a former minister and now chairs the governing Siemut party in Nuuk. His wife, Vivian Motzfeldt, Greenland's foreign minister, previously served as the board of Greenland's water bank. This blend of political influence and private investment has already drawn domestic criticism, especially when the water company has chosen to represent Greenland at a 2023 trade event in Washington, D.C. My oh my, that hole just gets a little bit deeper. Going back to 2019 here, Trump confirms he is considering attempt to buy Greenland. Donald Trump has confirmed he is considering an attempt to buy Greenland for strategic reasons. Again, this is back in 2019. The U.S. president's interest, reported earlier this week, was greeted internationally with widespread hilarity, but the indignation in Greenland and Denmark. The government of the semi-autonomous Danish territory insisted it was not for sale. The Danish prime minister called any discussion of a sale absurd. Nonetheless, on Sunday, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow first confirmed the story in an interview. That's a great freeze frame on that. Sorry. That's not all. We start to get something a little funky in all of this, because we know that it was Ron Lauder who was the one back in 2017 that took this idea to Trump, and they started working on it back then. But in 2019, as soon as this became public, Tom Cotton decides he's going to start taking the heat, saying it was his idea. I don't necessarily have an answer for this, but this came out of left field when I was looking at this. So Senator Tom Cotton says he pitched a Greenland deal to Denmark last year, but we know that that's a lie, as we saw where it actually came from. The Arkansas Republican proposed sale to Danish ambassador says he also raised the issue with Trump. Again, this is August 22nd, 2019. It says in the days after the news of President Trump's interest in purchasing Greenland emerged, the idea was derided as absurd, completely insane, and an April Fool's joke. Why would Tom Cotton want to take the heat from that? Interesting. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas proposed the idea to the Danish ambassador to the United States in August in 2018. We know that's a lie. In a meeting in the senator's office that has been arranged to discuss the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, according to a spokeswoman for Tom Cotton. Interesting. We also get this, which is an op-ed that Tom Cotton actually wrote in the New York Times. Tom Cotton, we should buy Greenland. Trump isn't the only one to recognize the country's strategic importance. Beijing does too. There's the narrative. There's the narrative. This is August 26, 2019, about the same time. It says, after news leaked last week that President Trump had expressed interest in acquiring Greenland from Denmark, his critics predictably, I can't say that word all of a sudden, derided him as crazy. But once again, the president is crazy like a fox. Again, this is Tom Cotton's words, or his writer that's doing it. It says, the acquisition of Greenland would secure vital strategic interests in the United States, economically benefit both us and the Greenlanders. I myself raised the prospect of acquiring Greenland with the Danish ambassador last year. Again, a lie. And he goes on to say, in 1946, the Truman administration offered $100 million to Denmark to acquire Greenland, arguing that the island was indispensable to the safety of the United States in confronting the growing Soviet threat, just as it has been in World War II. This is where we start to get some interesting things, because a lot of people haven't seen it. I have a copy of it somewhere. I don't know where it's at. I need to find it, because I'll show it to you guys if I can find it. But there is a special World War II map. You guys, if you've been around my channel, you've heard me talk about how World War II went off the rails because Hitler went off the rails. They were all friends back then. They were all working towards building a new structuring of world power in the world until Hitler got greedy and I think demonically insane. And started going off the rails, and World War II, the plan regarding it collapsed. They had a map drawn up where the world was going to be divvied up into their own hemispheres, with certain powers having control of things. China was going to have a power. Russia was going to have a power. Germany was going to have a power. Britain was going to have a power. The United States was going to have a power. And it's a special map that they were working towards. But that went off the rails because of Hitler. It's interesting because it looks like even after World War II, even though the plan went kaput, the Truman administration was looking to go ahead and get Greenland anyways, which would have been in the United States power back in the World War II map. Now, it's similar again to the 1930s technate, but still, a lot of those maps cross over. Pretty interesting in regards to that. And even Cotton here is referencing that bit of history. Along with that, a random letter started making its way around that is supposedly an official letter from Denmark directed towards Tom Cotton to have a discussion and a meeting regarding the sale of Greenland to the United States, that they were getting ready to discuss doing so. But the problem is this letter here that's addressed to Tom Cotton is a forgery. It's not a legitimate letter, even though it was displayed as such. And you have to actually go to an investigation by the Danish Commonwealth where they said it's forged. There's a forged letter purporting to be from the Greenlandic foreign minister to a key Republican senator is playing the lead role in fake news attack on both the unity of the Danish Commonwealth and the Danish-American relationship. And this is where things start going red. Experts believe that the arrow points to Russia, calling the attempt particularly crude. Again, this was in 2019. This forged ministerial letter designed to divide Denmark and the United States plays the lead role in fake news attack. At first glance, it looks like a genuine letter from the Greenlandic Minister of Foreign Affairs to a top American politician. It is written on self-government's Nalakauerskut letterhead, best I got, provided with a case number and apparently bears the signature of Minister Anne Lone Bagger. The letter is addressed to Senator Tom Cotton, who just happened to be, at the time, taking the heat off of Trump for proposing the idea of the United States buying Greenland, which we know is a lie. So we have Tom Cotton, who's playing a lie, and then we have a forged letter that's going along with said lie, but the Danish government is pointing to Russia, saying that it's their play of trying to divide the United States and Greenland. Things are a little interesting in regards to this. So, who's doing what in all of this? Now, if we follow the narrative, then we would be led to believe that Russia actually did plant a forged letter out there in order to try and break up the relationship between United States and Greenland. I just can't buy that, because this whole Tom Cotton situation, which we know is a lie because it actually came from Ron Lauder a year before, tells us that that wouldn't make any sense. Now, I don't have an answer in regards to this whole side of things. I can't find one. I have no idea what benefit this would be that's going on. But it's still part of the puzzle in all of this. All right. You guys still with me? Did I lose you? I hope I didn't lose you. Everybody still good? We all good here? Okay. I hope everybody's good. I don't want to lose anybody, because we're going deeper. So, what do we got? Well, Trump then proceeded to move forward with the concept of outright buying or outright trading Puerto Rico for Greenland. All of a sudden, we got Puerto Rico involved in all of this as well. Keep in mind, this is legitimate. This isn't stuff that you're just reading around out there. How this thing closes out, I'll tell you. It's legitimate. It says Trump proceeded to move forward with the concept of outright trading Puerto Rico for Greenland. So they went to Denmark and they said, we'll give you Puerto Rico if you give us Greenland. Denmark laughed. The trade scenario went public, causing more embarrassment for the Trump administration, resulting in Trump canceling the talks and John Bolton resigning 2 weeks later. Interesting. Then, on March 19th, 2019, Ron Lauder, president of the World Jewish Congress, meets with Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin to discuss Jewish interests with Russia, as well as Trump's interest in Greenland. Immediately following, Lauder then begins investing in Greenland. The Puerto Rico-Greenland trade and the fate of the United States territories. This is back in 2022. It says a new book, The Divider, Trump in the White House, 2017 to 2021, by Peter Baker and Susan Glasser, claimed that President Trump had to be told by staff that Puerto Ricans were United States citizens and that the island was a territory belonging to the United States. He asked whether the United States could divest itself of Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria devastated the island and suggested selling it. The authors report that Trump had been talking about acquiring Greenland for the United States from the beginning of his term in office. An old friend, Ron Lauder, offered to negotiate with Denmark to secure the territory. We know that that is true. President Harry Truman had offered to buy Greenland in 1946 for $100 million, but was refused. Trump became fascinated with the idea. A team of advisors held secret meetings with the Danish ambassador and came up with a list of options. Should they offer to buy Greenland as Trump wanted, lease it? What about concepts like shared sovereignty or pooled sovereignty? According to Miles Taylor, the former Homeland Security Chief of Staff, the president asked aides in August of 2018, lines up perfectly with the timeline that we have so far, before a disaster recovery trip to Puerto Rico, whether they could just trade the American Commonwealth outright for Greenland. The book references the MSNBC's report in this revelation in 2020. You guys can find that video. He actually did say that. And in 2019, Trump suggested taking money that had been allocated for disaster recovery in Puerto Rico and using it to purchase Greenland. How much hurricane disaster relief are we giving to Puerto Rico? He asked John Bolton. So again, we're getting confirmation. See, this stuff is verifying itself as we move forward. Can we just take that and use it for Greenland? Greenland never even considered the possibility. So yes, Puerto Rico for Greenland, some more random land swapping going on. This is back in March 19, 2019. This is Ronald Lauder. This is straight from the president of Russia's office, meeting with Ronald Lauder, 2019. Vladimir Putin received President of the World Jewish Congress, Ronald Lauder, in the Kremlin. The meeting was attended by presidential aide Yuri Uskov, Chief Rabbi of Russia, Beryl Lazar, and President of the Federation of Jewish Communities, Alexander Baroda. And we also have this, again, March 19th, 2019. Putin meets President of the World Jewish Congress, Ronald Lauder, in the Kremlin. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin has met the World Jewish Congress President Ronald Lauder. A statement from the Kremlin said on Tuesday the meeting was attended by President aide and so on and so forth that we covered. And it just so happens that this is about right when things start getting interesting, with Russia being involved with the United States in this trade of Greenland. Interesting. Keep going, shall we? It says Russia then begins publicly, quote unquote, investing in Venezuela to build a separate land swap deal. This includes military movement and meetings with Maduro. So what does public investing, why did I word it that way? What they started doing, because during this time, Russia was already involved with basically owning the politics of Venezuela. They were gaining control both in the political and in the economic side of Venezuela, and Putin was already friends with Maduro. They were already there, but that was private stuff. If you went looking for it, you could find it, but it wasn't something that was being flashed in the news, and it wasn't public knowledge. So they started publicly investing Venezuela, which appeared as a taunt. How does that work? That means Russia and Putin started putting out in the news that they were publicly backing Maduro. They started flying their military units into Venezuela publicly and on display, allowing the news to let it circulate that Russia was building up military in Venezuela. What would that do? It gets the public on the side of the United States to go against Maduro in Venezuela. This is propaganda 101. This is media manipulation 101. This stuff goes back decades. It's so simple. It's not hard to do. And so we started to see this is what Russia was doing to make it look good for the United States to go against Venezuela. Since beginning early 2019, Fiona Hill confirms that Russia issued several proposals that if the United States gives them Ukraine, they'll hand over Venezuela and Maduro. Then, with all of that, this is where things get juicy. A connection was discovered. Trump friend Rudy Giuliani. Yes, the same Rudy Giuliani, the lawyer, was representing clients of Rosneft, which is a Russian oil controller of Venezuela. This is where the whole narrative that I brought up at the very beginning, where everybody's saying China, 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 China involving Venezuela. The problem is it's the Russian groups that own Venezuelan oil. They're the ones that own them. Rudy Giuliani was representing one of the clients of Rosneft, who is the Russian oil controller of Venezuelan oil. They pretty much own everything in there. And Gazprom, Russian natural gas group that's invested in Ukraine, you know, Gazprom that sends Ukraine gas or Russian gas into Europe. Rudy Giuliani was representing several clients who worked at both. So now you have a Trump friend who's representing a client that's involved with energy in both Venezuela and Ukraine. What's the main deal that we've been seeing? Russia wants Ukraine, United States wants Venezuela. We've got a winner here. This backdoor energy plan is what led to all of the information that came out in 2019 that led to Trump's first impeachment. We were told it was Russian assets spying on Joe Biden. What was really going on was this. the deal was about to go public and they had to cover it up. So some of the news that started coming out about this was December 2018. United States-Russian spat over bombers landing in Venezuela. The two 160 bombers landed in Venezuela on Monday in a Russian show of support for the government of Socialist President Nicolas Maduro. We got this. This is March 27, 2019, why Russia just sent troops to Venezuela. It says Russia recently sent 2 military planes full of troops and equipment to Venezuela. It's a move that could provoke a strong response from the United States and potentially plunge the South American nation into further chaos. There's your propaganda. How do we know it? Because we just did a history check to reveal what was really going on. This was put out, and it's a public display. The information isn't false. They're telling you what's really going on, but what's really going on is theater. And so the news is reporting on said theater, which means it's fake. It says around 100 Russians landed outside of Caracas, Venezuela's capital, with unidentified equipment on Saturday. It's not entirely clear why they've arrived now. We discovered why. Although some fear they might have come to help Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro fend off a U.S.-led attempt to dispose him. Interesting, isn't it? Then we have this. Giuliani told the United States his client deserves leniency for financing Venezuela's opposition. This is a long article. We're not going to go through all of it. But it starts off with an August gathering. This was 2020. August gathering at a private estate in Spain. Wealthy Venezuelan businessmen under criminal investigation in the United States introduced Rudy Giuliani, President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, to the father of Venezuela's opposition leader, Juan Guaido. Hang on to that name. We're going to get that in just a second. It says the affair was a part of the campaign for leniency for the businessman Alejandro Betancourt, who sought to demonstrate his close ties to opposition figures looking to oust Venezuela's socialist president Nicolas Maduro, a key objective of the Trump administration. Betancourt told Giuliani he secretly helped bankroll Guaido's efforts to take over the leadership of Venezuela, according to 4 people familiar with this situation. And it goes on to say that Betancourt and several other clients involved with Giuliani are investors and executives within both Gazprom and Rosneft and so on and so forth. So it's a big, long thing. We're not going to go through it, but that's the gist happening there. If you guys don't know, the Guaido thing, the opposition leader that was going on in Venezuela at the time, was another, it was a failed attempt where they put in an opposition leader to start to allow the United States to back him, which they did. The United States backed Guaido as opposition to Maduro, who Russia was then publicly promoting in that way. So that was causing more conflict and friction in the news between the United States and Russia, even though it was all a facade at that time. So that's where that whole thing comes into play. So this is where we start wrapping this whole situation up, because John Bolton, through all of this, played direct interference between Trump and Putin regarding the Monroe Doctrine style landswap deals. John Bolton was the one that kept throwing wrenches into everything and causing all these deals to not go through. This was supposed to happen during Trump's first term. Didn't happen because Bolton kept doing what he was doing. And so, in retaliation, we saw that there was the FBI raids, and October 16th, 2025, he was indicted. Because he was not going along with what the puppeteers wanted him to do, he got punished. And he got punished hard for it. Interesting. Media groups. This is fascinating. Media groups from around the world, and I've gone looking. I've gone to the Middle East. I've gone to Europe. I've gone to Asia. I've gone to the Western United States. All of a sudden, media groups from around the world have begun using the terms hemisphere and backyard to describe power grabs from Russia, China, and the United States. Out of the blue. They weren't using those terms before until now. They are beginning to normalize the quote-unquote Monroe world. Since they're taking those terms and they're starting to push them out there more and more and more into the media all across the world, they're normalizing what they're working towards. And that requires using verbiage and language like hemisphere and backyard all of a sudden. And that's what they're doing. On top of that, Trump's national security strategy, which we did cover, explicitly outlines withdrawing support from Europe and sees them as weak and opposition. In the same national security strategy, they're starting to go in the style of supporting Russia. We covered that. And so that is definitely there. And this whole Greenland thing requires withdrawing from Europe. And they view them as weak and as opposition. And to put the cherry on top of that, Hungary's Viktor Orban, who's both a friend to Trump and Putin, has shown support of the United States taking control of Greenland. He's just kind of sitting there in a little island over there in Europe, but he's backing Trump and Putin on this. Now, where things get interesting and mysterious, I can't find anything on this, but something tells me this is playing a part in all of this. This is from August 18th, 2025. This was just last year. Experts claim Trump's team were left shocked and frightened after the Putin meeting in Anchorage, Alaska. The Russian leader invited Donald Trump to Moscow for further talks in this press conference. I remember when this news first came out, I saw it. I explicitly remember this. When this came out, and that was the headlines that was coming out. Trump's team was shocked, ghost-faced, just white from this meeting that happened between Trump and Putin in Alaska. But we had no answers. None. We still don't have any answers. This is last week's meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska may well go down in history in regards to the war in Ukraine, even though nobody seems to know what was said. Despite the United States president suggesting previously that he wouldn't be happy with anything other than a ceasefire agreement, the 79-year-old seemed to be in high spirits in his press conference as he suggested that they now have a very good chance of getting there. While we know little about what actually happened during the two leaders' 3-hour meeting, other than their lunch apparently being canceled, it seems as if one thing in particular left Trump's team feeling shocked and ashen-faced, with some experts suggesting it was likely down to the comment from Putin's side. Describing the mood of Trump's aides, such as Press Secretary Karen Leavitt and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff after the meeting, NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander said that their eyes were wide and ashened. What struck me was the looks on their faces of a lot of the American delegation, he said, per the Daily Mail. Leavitt appeared to be stressed out and anxious, while Witkoff came into the room, then left quickly, then came back in. Those were some of the sort of images that will stick with me as we leave here. Says Antonia Hilton, MSNBC host, added a lot of the press corps that was there. They reported in the minutes and hours after the presser that they saw members of the administration, the Trump administration, like Carolyn Leavitt, look ashen, almost frightened after what they had seen behind closed doors. Could they have witnessed discussions about things like we just went over? Remember, and I want people to remember this because sometimes we forget it. People in those positions don't know everything that's going on. They're told a limited amount of information and to just move along with it, and that's how they go. They're not privy to a lot of this stuff. So could these people have seen what is actually taking place behind closed doors? And they had no idea, and they're just shocked. It's possible. I don't know. Nobody knows. We have no idea what was going on in that meeting between Trump and Putin. We have no idea. But it is fascinating that the talks is apparently about things like Ukraine and ending the war and stuff like that. And not 6 months later, the Venezuela thing goes down. Are we witnessing the beginning of that deal that was being worked on during the first Trump administration? It's possible. We'll just have to wait and see. But that bit of information is pretty interesting on that. So, their Illuminati overlords finally revealed the new plan. They may have, man, and some of those people that have never actually witnessed that stuff may have been shocked at what they saw. So, with all of that, that's a lot of history and a background regarding some deals that have been in the works for a very long time between Trump and Putin, between the Trump administration and Putin's group over there. And it's been a lot of talks, a lot of plans, a lot of things in motion, a lot of actions. Apparently, John Bolton there really threw a monkey wrench into all of this, and he got punished for it. And it's possible that what we're seeing right now is the beginning of that. Again, I am still right now, as of now, with the information that I have and the trends that I'm seeing and everything like that, I'm still on the train that we are entering a time where there is going to be some massive global power shifts happening in this world. I do not think that 2026 is going to remain status quo when it comes to that. Now, if we're here at the end of the year and we're still status quo, I'll eat it. But again, I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying, as of right now, with the trends that I've seen, we seem to be going in that direction pretty hard and pretty fast. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Lonnie, is that Lonnie Linnea? I don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry. Talking about Putin captures Z. That's the other thing that I've seen. I've seen some information regarding that. Not information, but like some opinion regarding that, where if Putin gave Trump Maduro in Venezuela, there's a chance that in return, Trump is going to basically give Putin Zelensky. And so you might see Russia do the same thing with Zelensky that you just saw the United States do with Maduro. And Trump will say, Zelensky will be here at this time, at this place, we'll get things set up, and then you'll see Russia go in and snatch Zelensky. War over. Done. At that point, it'd be over. So there's a chance we could see that. We'll see. We'll see. So with that, I'm going to grab some water, and then we're going to shift into this Denmark thing. All right. Let's take a look at what's going on with Denmark, because this is something that seems to be a brewing right now. Because again, we saw this being discussed early on, just before or just after Trump's inauguration. They started talking about the Greenland. Then it went dormant and went silent for a little bit. Now all of a sudden, just before the Venezuela attack, like a week before, Trump administration starts talking about Greenland again, and then they do the Venezuela situation, and then they come out swinging in the media front of things regarding Greenland. So we'll see what's going to happen with this. So what do we got going on here? We got a video with Trump talking about why they need Greenland. So let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
We need Greenland for national security. Not for minerals. We have so many sites for minerals and oil and everything. We have more oil than any other country in the world. We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place.
So straight from the horse's mouth, he's saying we don't need Greenland for their resources, even though we know that's part of it. But again, and I want to make this very clear, while the resource stuff does play a part in all of this, I'm not diminishing that. Look at the bigger picture. If their goal truly is Monroe Doctrine style hemisphere power grabs, the resources comes along with the main goal of just building that new structure. So everybody is still focusing on the resources. Again, you look at what's going on in Venezuela. Everybody's talking drugs. Everybody's talking oil. Everybody's talking that stuff. And yes, besides the drugs, it's never about the drugs. But you look at the resources and stuff, that plays a part in it. It does. But if they're truly going for that Monroe-style hemisphere power situation and revamping the map, then that stuff is stuff that just comes along with it. So when he's saying we need Greenland for national security, it's not about the minerals and stuff like that. Yes, that stuff comes along with it. But when they say it's about that, about the national security, that's about building the Monroe Doctrine style power system. That's the bigger picture. Now, in the grand scheme of things, we know it's not the big picture, but it's the bigger picture. It's the step that you have to take to move towards the big picture. So again, I'm just trying to get people to not get so hung up on these smaller things. Yeah, pay attention to them, gather information, see what's going on. But everybody is just so focused on that they're losing track of really what's going on. I've received so many emails from people says, I saw this. They say this is what Venezuela is about, and it's about some small little thing. It's like, I don't think so. I think it's much bigger than that. Look bigger. And I've received a ton of those emails. Half of them are basically saying it's about, taking down China and stuff like that. And I immediately respond with, I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe that the United States is at war with China. And I believe there's something much bigger going on than what we're being told is going on. And he's saying it, national security. And then he pulls out the narrative card. Greenland's surrounded by Russia and China, Russia and Chinese ships. And so we're getting fed that information as well. That's how I view things. That's how I look at it. That's how I navigate through these things. It hasn't done me wrong yet. I might come to a day where all of a sudden a bomb's dropped on my head because I'm thinking in that direction, but it hasn't happened yet. So we got this. It says U.S. working on Greenland deal to pitch to island leaders. The Economist. This came out today. It says the administration of the United States President Donald Trump is working on a draft agreement on Greenland, which may be offered to the island's leadership in the future, according to The Economist. Washington is considering the possibility of concluding a compact of free association. Says the United States already has similar agreements with Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, and Palau. The United States provides financial assistance to its partners, who in turn delegate defense issues to the United States while retaining internal autonomy. According to The Economist, According to The Economist, the Trump administration's strategy towards Greenland has two objectives: to exacerbate differences between Denmark and Greenland, and to try and establish direct agreements with local authorities, bypassing Copenhagen. So we got a report coming out from The Economist, and we know who owns The Economist, the Luciferians themselves. It says the United States is working on Greenland. Possibility. I'm getting reports that there's other things in the works. We'll see what happens. Then we also have this that came out. It says Denmark says United States attack on Greenland would mean end of NATO. This is where my ears started perking up. This came out January 5th. This Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said that if Donald Trump were to attack the Danish island of Greenland, that would mean the end of the NATO alliance. I believe one should take the American president seriously. But everybody was telling me it's just a joke. It's just Trump being Trump, just joking around. Ha, jokey, dur. It says, I believe one should take the American president seriously when he says he wants Greenland. Fredrickson said in an interview with Danish broadcaster TV2, but I will also make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including NATO, and thus the security that has been established since the end of the Second World War. My ears perked up with this because we know, based on the national security strategy put out by the Trump administration, that the United States views the European Union, which NATO mainly consists of, there's other ones outside, obviously, but it mainly consists of European countries in NATO. And we know that the Trump national security policy is basically saying that you guys are weak, you guys are opposition, and I'm backing away from you. The United States has withdrawn troops from multiple European countries and all these types of things, and he's backing away from the EU as well as NATO in regards to all of this stuff. And we know that Trump is working with Russia and Putin on many different things about power grabs and land grabs and all this type of stuff. And we know that Russia wants to take down the EU. The United States wants to take down the EU. We know that if Rome 2 is going to come into play, you have to tear down what's there at the studs in order to be rebuilt into what we know it will play a part of, a very fragile but large system in prophetic times when that comes. You want to take down the European Union? Eliminate NATO. The European Union's already fried on the economy side. They have no leadership. Everything is collapsing around Europe. The only thing that's really holding it up over there is NATO, is military. If you get rid of NATO, the EU will start collapsing. This could be a play to get that done. Danish Prime Minister says a United States takeover of Greenland would mark the end of NATO. Says Danish Prime Minister met Fredrickson said on Monday the American takeover of Greenland would amount to the end of NATO military alliance. The dead-of-night operation by the U.S. forces in Caracas to capture leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife early Saturday left the world stunned and heightened concerns in Denmark and Greenland, which is semi-autonomous territory of the Danish kingdom and thus part of NATO. Fredrickson and her Greenlandic counterpart, Jens Frederik Nielsen, blasted the president's comments and warned of catastrophic consequences. Numerous European leaders expressed solidarity with them. Trump called repeatedly during his presidential transition in the early months of his second term for the United States jurisdiction over Greenland and has not ruled out military force to take control of the island. His comments Sunday included telling reporters, let's talk about Greenland in 20 days, further deepened fears that the United States was planning an intervention in Greenland in the near future. Anybody keeping tabs on the calendar? 20 days? See what happens. It says Europe backs Greenland after Trump resumes takeover threats. European officials pledged to support Greenland after Trump restarted his campaign to take the self-governed island in the wake of his strike on Venezuela. Across the continent, Europe's biggest powers expressed solidarity with Greenland. I stand with her, and she's right about the future of Greenland, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer told Sky News on Monday, adding that Greenland's future is for Denmark and Greenland to decide. The responses come as speculation mounts that the United States may use the variation of its Venezuela playbook on Greenland. Trump himself made the connection on Sunday, saying that the island could be another target following the move to depose Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and take control of the South American country. France swiftly reiterated its support of Denmark and Greenland's sovereignty and territorial integrity. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadefuhl made the same point, noting that Greenland would, in principle, also be subject to NATO defense. The European Commission, the European Union's executive branch, downplayed comparisons between Trump's designs in Venezuela and Greenland. The European Commission, I watched that video of them answering questions. They outright refused to go against Trump and his claims. They did every possible way that they could to dance around it without just outright saying Trump will not get Greenland. It shows their weakness. It shows that it's possible that this may happen. It says the United States is effectively the NATO's alliance leader, however, and this is where things get interesting. If Trump were to take military action against Greenland, it would create an unprecedented situation with one NATO member moving on an alliance ally. The United States is the leader of NATO. That's why if they turn their back on it, the whole thing crumbles. It falls apart. And that's important to pay attention to. So Trump has long argued that the United States must control Greenland to ensure its own security, but the move to extract Venezuela's president set off fresh alarm bells in Copenhagen, raising new concern that Trump may soon set his sights on Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation, Trump said Sunday aboard Air Force One, adding that Denmark is not going to be able to do it. He even put a vague timeline on the situation. We'll worry about Greenland in about 2 months, Trump said. Let's talk about Greenland in 20 days. He doesn't even know how long a month is. Trump, 2 months is not 20 days. Just a little thing there. Anyways, that's beside the point. Then this came out today. This is a joint statement from Europe countries on Greenland. It's a statement by President Macron of France, Chancellor Merz of Germany, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, Prime Minister Tusk of Poland, Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain, Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom, and Prime Minister Frederiksen of Denmark on Greenland. It says Arctic security remains a key priority for Europe, and it is critical for international and transatlantic security. NATO has made it clear that the Arctic region is a priority, and European allies are stepping up. We and many other allies have increased our presence, activities, and investments to keep the Arctic safe and to deter adversaries. The Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland, is a part of NATO. Security in the Arctic must therefore be achieved collectively in conjunction with NATO allies, including the United States, by upholding the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the inviolability of borders. This is universal principles, and we will not stop defending them. The United States is an essential partner in this endeavor as a NATO ally and through the defense agreement between the Kingdom of Denmark and the United States of 1951. Greenland belongs to its people. It is for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. For something that I was told over and over and over again is just a joke that Trump is putting out there, doesn't sure seem like it to these people. Either that or this is a really big circus act, which it could be. But I remember when this first started getting talked about earlier this year, I said, this is not a joke. And now we're here, and it's looking like it's building towards something. Then we had this. This was hours, just mere hours after the United States went into Venezuela. Katie Miller, who is Stephen Miller's wife. Katie Miller has a podcast and stuff like that, but she's the wife of Stephen Miller, who's like one of the architects of the Trump administration and what they're doing right now. She posted this with Greenland covered in an American flag, and she said, soon. Just joking, right? Just joking. Let's listen to an interview of Stephen Miller. I have a really hard time listening to this dude. You'll see why if you've never heard him talk. But try and see through it and listen to what he's saying. It's about 3 minutes, but it's worth it because I think you guys need this in full context, because I continue to get a whole bunch of people who clearly don't like the information that I put out, saying that I'm taking things out of context and building a narrative of my own, and I need to show context and all that type of stuff. But so this is for you guys, I guess. But it's pretty important. He's having a conversation here. Let's listen to what's going on.
Important topic. The Premier of Greenland and the Premier of Denmark and other Danish officials are responding to a Twitter post from your wife, Katie Miller, herself a former Trump White House official, showing Greenland covered with an American flag, saying soon. After that was posted, President Trump repeated the claim that the U.S. needs Greenland for national security reasons. The Danish Prime Minister responded to this In an interview earlier today, as reported by Bloomberg, quote, I believe one should take the American president seriously when he says it wants Greenland, but I will also make it clear that if the U.S. chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including NATO, and thus the security that has been established since the end of the Second World War. Can you rule out that the U.S. is ever going to try to take Greenland by force?
Well, let me go back a step. The president has been clear for months now, so I know you're treating this as breaking news. The president has been clear for months now that the United States should be the nation that has Greenland as part of our overall security apparatus. The United
Right, but
States,
your wife posted that like hours after the Venezuela operation. That's why it's newly relevant.
No, I'm not, and I'll talk with you about it for an hour. I think it's a really important conversation. I just wanted to reset, Jake, by making clear that it has been the formal position of the U.S. government since the beginning of this administration, frankly, going back into the previous Trump administration, that Greenland should be part of the United States.
After what we just went through, all the history and the evidence and the reports and all that stuff that we have gathered, is he lying? No. We know for a fact that the formal stance of this Trump administration, going back to the previous Trump administration, has been Trump believes that Greenland is part of the United States. We can confirm he is telling the truth.
The president has been very clear about that. That is the formal position of the U.S. government.
Right, but can you say that military action against Greenland is off the table?
It wouldn't be military action against Greenland. The Greenland has a population of 30,000 people, Jake. The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? What is their basis of having...
I don't even know what to do, because that line is always, what's the basis of Denmark having control of Greenland? What's the basis of them having it? Let me ask you the question, what's the basis of the United States having a country that belongs to Denmark? Do you see, this is the mentality that the Trump administration and Trump and Witkoff and Stephen Miller and Hegseth and Marco Rubio, that's how they think. That's why these people were the perfect ones to select and plug into their positions so they can get this done, because that is their mentality. You need people who think that way in order to move this stuff forward. That's why these people are hand selected. That's why they can't rely upon the people to vote people in and then they can try and work with what they've been given. No, that's why they hand select people for mentality just like that. That's why it's so key.
Greenland is a colony of Denmark. The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the United States. And so that's a conversation that we're going to have as a country. That's a process we're going to have as a community of nations.
So you can't take it off the table that the U.S. would use military force to seize Greenland. You can't take it off the table.
Jake, I understand you're trying very hard to, which again, is your job. I respect it. It's great to get exactly the headline, right? That catchy headline.
I'm trying to get an answer to the question.
That says Miller refuses to rule out. The United States should have Greenland as part of the United States. There's no need to even think or talk about this in the context that you're asking of a military operation. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland.
That's the answer. While he's not giving a direct answer of yes or no, he just told you the answer. If we did, nobody's going to fight us. We'll just take it. Just like what happened in Venezuela. That's the answer. So he's not giving a yes or no answer, but he's telling you that yes, it's on the table. And if we did, nobody's going to do anything about it. That's why it's important. Then, because that was yesterday, then coming out today, we actually get a direct answer. President Trump has reiterated using the United States military to acquire Greenland as a national security priority. The question was indeed answered today. The White House said on Tuesday that President Trump is weighing using the U.S. military to acquire the Danish territory of Greenland. President Trump has made it well known that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States, and it's vital to deter our adversaries in the Arctic region, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said in a statement to The Hill. The president and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important military or foreign policy goal, and of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the commander-in-chief's disposal, Carolyn Leavitt said. Confirmed. Leavitt's statement comes on the heels of a report by the Wall Street Journal that indicated Secretary of State Marco Rubio told congressional lawmakers during a closed-door briefing Monday that Trump's goal is to buy the island of Denmark. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller echoed Trump's remarks in an interview on CNN on Monday, and that's what we just watched there. Confirmed. So it is very much on the table that we've got a situation where Denmark may be a part of the United States in 2026. But Trump's just joking. Ha 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 ha. Venezuela was about drugs. Da 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 da. Iraq's got WMDs. Go out and go shopping. 9/11 wasn't an inside job. Just keeps on going. Just keeps on going. And to add on to that, after Venezuela, Trump says Cuba is ready to fall. Capture of Nicolas Maduro is a devastating blow to the alliance between Venezuela and Cuba. Many wonder if the island nation will be the target next. This came out yesterday. Shortly after the U.S. forces captured Venezuela leader, President Donald Trump said that Cuba's days were numbered and that his administration may turn its sights on the communist island next. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall, Mr. Trump said to reporters on Air Force One. I don't know if they're going to hold out, but Cuba now has no income. They got all their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. Pressed about the prospect of the United States intervening militarily in Cuba, Mr. Trump said he would not think it would be necessary because it's already going down. Whether Washington does move against Cuba remains to be seen. President Trump has surrounded himself with Cuba hawks, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a Cuban American. Why hasn't he been deported? Anyways, who has a U.S. senator and famous for his long-standing antipathy towards Havana. Mr. Rubio has long signaled his belief that a change in Venezuela's government would weaken Cuba, which he said would be a welcome outcome. Remember, 2020, the Russian politician confirmed Fiona Hill's testimony and said, Trump gets Venezuela, we get Ukraine. Trump's going to say, look, Venezuela, then he's going to get Cuba. Interesting. Lot of moving pieces going on.